Ever since I was a little kid and saw ads for it in video game magazines, I wanted to buy and try Sega VR. That dream died when Sega canceled it in the mid-90s. Until Nuclear Rush resurfaced. Then I was like, okay, time to get to work. I 3D printed some of these parts and everything else I had laying around. I used two small 640 by 480 LCD screens, a Tenetter VR headset head strap, an open dive 3D model that I 3D printed, a donor Sega controller. I used some Mercury switches for the 30-degree tilt, and toggle switches with fishing line for the head turning. Here I am building the prototype. Please note you can always skip ahead using chapters if you just want to see the end result. While the build footage is playing, I just want to give a little history about the Sega VR for those who are unfamiliar. The Sega VR is an unreleased virtual reality headset developed by Sega in the early 1990s. This was a planned add-on for the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive depending on your country. It was completed and shown off at various electronic shows in 1993 and was supposed to have a retail price of $200 USD. It was scheduled to be released sometime in 1994. Due to development issues, it remained a prototype and was never released to the public. Sega's official comment was, the Sega VR is just too realistic to release, when in reality, the main reason was motion sickness, and they had even more motion sickness issues when converting to the PAL region. The head turning is primarily why I call this version 1. I'm still working out what type of sensors I want to use or what type of technology I want to use for the head tracking. Things like proximity switches, compass technology, or even laser or light brake technology. I need analog sourceless orientation sensor, or basically an analog gyroscope to get this working. But for now, I'll just use the switches. Okay, so my original plan was to have a petri dish with different sensors, and then a piece of cork in there cut like this, suspended in fluid so it's floating, and then paint the whole petri dish with the cap black. So if mounted on the headset, when you turn it, it would work like a compass if I put a piece of metal, magnetic metal here. And then the light and the sensor would go through and activate that sensor. And you turn the other way, it will activate that sensor. Now the problem with this is you would always have to be facing or starting north on this type of sensor, but it should work. So again, petri dish with a fluid in here, piece of cork with a piece of magnet. So when you go that way, the light shines through and activates the sensor. Now I do have the original Sega VR patent that I've been going through, and that's one of the ways I got this idea. Here I'm showing you some footage of Yeti 3D running on the 32X. There's a lot of great games that could have showed the full potential of Sega VR, but I feel that this is the best example to show the hardware's full potential. I often wonder where we would be if more VR devices came out in the 90s. One, of course, can only speculate, and even though this stuff didn't come out in the 90s, I'm glad the VR we have today is here to stay. I hope you guys enjoyed all this information and this build and Sega VR in general. You can play Nuclear Rush on modern VR headsets, however, I really wanted to play it on actual Sega hardware as it was intended. At any rate, here's the end result, and this is still a work in progress. The end result was an okay prototype that did function as a Sega VR headset. However, I really need to get proper sensors created or configured to work with the Sega hardware. I do intend to keep working on this, however, the future of it all depends on what else I'm working on, if I have time, or if I come up with any more breakthroughs. I'll go ahead and leave some links in the description to everything I found while researching this project. That way, if you're interested in making your own, or find something that might be helpful to you or me, please share. Until next time, have a great one.